Good morning to everyone out there in the virtual world. Welcome to another edition of Chime In Live. I am your host, Meschida Philip. And today we have two amazing colleagues, creative colleagues of mine, Karen and Michael, who are coming here talking about the whole process of submitting our work into festivals. For the most part, people think that festivals are a hoax of submitting our work into festivals. Most people think that it's a hoax when we people pay for submissions into festival and we do not watch the films or anything along that line. And to be quite honest, it's far from the truth. Um, Michael is in Dominica right now. He is experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty, so he'll be joining us in a few. But I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our media partner, Ride Along, who some of you are streaming live on right now, to the Robinsons Real Estate Group for supporting us. And as you know, we're going live with the festival in October. So all of you out there, support the festival by following us on 1261 Film Festival, both on Facebook and Instagram. So I'm so excited to introduce you to our guests today. So we are going to start with Karen. Karen, welcome to Ride Along. I'm always co-hosting Ride Along. Welcome to Chime In Live with me today. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Hey, Michael.
Hey, how's it going?
So, Karen, take a moment to introduce yourself to our virtual audience. I'd like to give the guests the opportunity to let them know who you are and what you're about. So, without any further ado, your moment right now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏. I am a film festival programmer. I worked as an editor in features and documentaries in short format for a long time. I'm the head of programming for the Tide Film Festival, which is a film festival for filmmakers across ethnicities, so Black, White, Asian, Pacific Islander, Arabic. And I'm a feature programmer for Doc NYC, which is a documentary film festival based in New York City. And I program other small festivals and series here and there. And I'm also a professor of post-production at Long Island University.
Okay. No, this is awesome. So I am so excited and pleased to have you here. Just being in your presence and the years of experience and wealth that you bring with us, we are honored to truly have you here. And we also have Michael joining us today. Michael, how are you doing today? Take a moment to introduce yourself to our virtual audience.
Cool. My name is Michael Lees. I'm a documentary film director and photographer out of Dominica. And I recently released my first feature documentary, 𝗠𝗏𝘅𝗍𝗍𝗄, where I ended up surviving a Category 5 Hurricane Maria in the forest.
That's it. I mean, just looking at your film just the same, I was just explaining to Karen backstage how the first time I saw your film, I had chills. I was literally in my room that night watching your film, and I'm like, I can't watch this tonight because I have nightmares, just the experience. And you and I had a conversation before too, Michael, and then I had to wait till the daytime to look at it again to say, okay, ooh, I can breathe. I've never had the experience of going through a storm like that magnitude, and I don't think I want to experience that.
Understandable.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people out there want to know. As someone who is the executive director of a film festival myself, you hear a lot of different versions. People want to know when they actually submit to our festivals, if their films actually get seen and the whole nine yards. Karen, I will start with you because you are a very vital role in festivals. And I want people to first understand how important is the role of a programmer and what exactly are your responsibilities with the festivals?
Okay. So a programmer is a person who is responsible for selecting the films for the festival. We put together the program. So yeah, that's that's what I do. Because it is
Exactly.
a film festival to have films, right? And so you have to, a lot of things go into consideration when you're picking your films. If you have multiple films of the same topic, you can't have a whole bunch of those. Length of program, there, of course you want the best films, but there are also some other smaller considerations. And not all films work for all festivals. So I'm screening right now for Doc NYC, which is a really great documentary film festival. And I see some really great documentaries that aren't quite our brand. They're great films, but they'd be better played for like a European art house as opposed to the New York City. We know who our audience is, and so you try and tailor films to your audience.
I agree. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people have to start, or filmmakers or emerging filmmakers have to educate themselves on, is understanding the type of film that they have, and also what is the message or what are the interests of the festival. Not every festival is the right fit for your film. So you yourself have to have a festival strategy when coming forward to deciding where you as a filmmaker would like to have your films lived. Michael, from a perspective of a filmmaker, how did you go about selecting the type of festivals that you wanted to get your film into?
So I would definitely say, to start off with, it's kind of a daunting task because there's almost an infinite number of festivals you could be choosing from. So just to figure out where to start. But I think one of the useful things of where I started was the Caribbean. Obviously, it's a film based in the Caribbean. And then, so Caribbean film festivals are essentially a niche set of festivals that I knew this film could do well in. And then, let me just see, there's a ratio I have up. Basically, you kind of want to split between top tier, mid tier, and niche festivals. So I think it's about 50% towards mid tier. Let me see, I think it was maybe 30% to top tier, 50% to mid tier, and 20% to niche festivals. And it's actually been interesting. I thought I would get some more feedback from like environmentally themed festivals, but surprisingly, I didn't. I am going to be screening at like climate summit type things, but outside of the festival realm. And then otherwise, it has been Caribbean, African diaspora, and documentary niche for the most part.
Karen, no, this is awesome. And I think you give a different perspective, Michael, from that of a filmmaker, and then to understand. But you also raised three things that I was not going to talk about, the different categories. So you have the top tier, you have the niche, and then you have just the regular festival.
Yeah.
Karen, can you speak a little bit more to explain to the audiences looking on? Because we are looking at a plethora of different people from different experiences, and they may or may not understand what Michael just explained. From a perspective of a programmer, would you be able to share some insights?
Sure. And I think Michael might know as well as I. Michael, you can chime in too.
Mhm.
The top tier festivals are the big ones. They tend to be markets. So people go there to buy films. Companies go there to buy films. So the big dogs are Sundance, Cannes, Berlin, Tribeca. They're the ones that everyone has heard of. are those big festivals. There are more than those, but those are the ones that come to mind. The mid tiers are somewhere in the middle. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what their distinction is or the definition is. The niche ones are the ones that are just very specific. Tide is a niche festival. It's catering to filmmakers of color. Um, there are Black film festivals, there are Indigenous film festivals, there are women-centered. There's a climate-centered one that Michael's talking about, environmental ones, whatever, so they're theme specific.
Yeah, because what we are also, well, we're a fairly young festival just the same. And just to hit on it, because we created the festival just for that, to provide a platform to give more eyeballs to a lot of the diverse filmmakers, especially coming from the region, the Caribbean region, because we are set in the Caribbean, as well as other filmmakers from the African diaspora who are looking for a different type of audience. And Tide does very much the same thing that we are also promoting. And I love that, because we are also understanding that there is a need. People don't, there's a lot of other, I had conversations with other individuals who do not really buy in to the whole film festival realm, and especially now with COVID-19, that everything got turned upside down. Do you feel what we are doing as festival platforms or organizers or programmers, do you think what we're doing is relevant still? Because everyone is still wondering now that we're all going virtual. What is your take on that? And you can go
Well,
from perspectives.
well, since it's my job, yeah, I think it's relevant. Please, thank you. But yeah, I mean, but films have to get seen somewhere, and if you're not a studio film, then it needs a platform, and lots of films get discovered in film festivals. Some film festivals are a good place for networking, like the niche film festivals, I think, are really good for networking and seeing films that speak to a specific audience. But it's really nurturing for filmmakers of whatever niche to talk to other filmmakers of that niche.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the bigger festivals, that's where films get bought. Netflix and HBO and these streaming services go out to these festivals to find stuff to put on their platforms. And yeah, festivals are quite relevant.
Michael, do you feel that we add value to the work of filmmakers? And how
One,
do you feel about the festival arena?
yeah, I was gonna say 100%. I've had some amazing experiences at festivals. I've met, just like Karen said, the networking opportunities are immense. Like, for instance, even when we premiered at the Trinidad Film Festival, that then got me into a film festival in French Guiana. It almost would have got me into the Chelsea Film Festival, except for a timing issue. I ended up meeting a contact who writes for The Guardian, and we've stayed in contact. And then at the Barbados Film Festival, I ended up making a contact who I'm about to use his kind of PR person to start getting booked more onto podcasts, which is a great way to promote a budget film like mine. And then with the Third Horizon Film Festival in Miami, I essentially got my online distribution deal through them, and met so many cool Caribbean and diaspora filmmakers all over. It's like being plugged into this like worldwide matrix of Caribbean filmmakers. So 1,000%.
I like to hear that. I really, really like to hear that, because it's a nice way of not necessarily me saying it, not to be kind of biased per se. And as Karen said, that's our job, right? So if we're constantly saying and trying to promote how great it is, right? You have to come experience it. It is nice to hear it from the perspective of a filmmaker, because what we do is a lot of hard work. It is not that simple. Karen knows that you're talking about sometimes hundreds, depending on the size of your festival, thousands of films that might be coming in, and you have to have a team in her capacity as the head programmer. she is overseeing other programmers. So it is a process that have to happen. And in your festivals that you are spearheading, Karen, what is that back end process? How, from the time of submissions, that a filmmaker submit their film to your festival, to the time of acceptance and then premiere? What does that process look like in the back end? And if someone, that's one question, and I'm asking you two in one thing. And if someone wants to become a programmer, how do they go about doing so?
Okay, so the programming team is breaking up. Anyway, the programming team is screeners, programmers, and the head programmer. So the screeners, once you submit your film to Film Freeway, or you meet a programmer at a festival and you say, oh, will you take a look at my film? I like to have everything come in through Film Freeway just to keep it organized, because when people send me random links all over the place, they get lost in the sauce. So once your film is in Film Freeway, they start getting doled out to pre-screeners, and the pre-screeners are people who know something about film. They're not just people who really like film, but they know something about film construction. They're familiar with festivals. They know what the festivals, themes are, and so they're the first to watch the film. And yes, they watch the film all the way through. Yes, we watch the films all the way through. We wouldn't do this job if we didn't want to watch your film. So watch the film all the way through, and the pre-screeners make recommendations to the programmers, usually scoring pretty traditional format is to score between 1 and 5. 1 is like, this is not really a great film, it's not worth considering. 2, maybe. 3, 4, very good. 5, excellent. And then it goes up to the programmers, and the programmers do the same thing. They watch the films and they write up evaluations on technique, on content, on length, on sound, just their overall impression. You think it's appealing to the audience. And then the highest ones go up to the directors of programming, and they make the selection. And there are always more good films than there are slots available. There are always more good films. I'm working right now for Doc NYC. We've had over 2,500 submissions, and we're only programming 100 films. And it's heartbreaking. We have these conversations amongst the programming team, and we're fighting for the films that we love, but we just simply can't play every film that we like. Oh, you asked if you want to be a programmer. I'm sorry. You should have some background in film. Screeners, you usually start as a screener, and then you move up as a programmer. That's how I did it. Screeners often are not paid. Programmers are not paid all that well either. It's really a job of love. So
it is.
Don't go into programming if you're trying to get rich. All the programmers I know work in multiple festivals, and they also have other side hustles so they can eat.
Totally. I'm coming from both perspectives as a filmmaker and also a festival director. And I recall my first documentary, I got rejected so many times in different festivals. I felt so crushed that I'm like, oh my God, my work is not good enough. But it went back to exactly what we talked about earlier, understanding the difference in the type of festival, what type of audience my film would have resonated with. And once I started to have a proper strategy for my film, it became much easier, and the acceptance rate was increased. So we have to put it out there that for people whose film might not have been selected for a particular festival, does not necessarily mean their film is not good. But as Karen alluded to, it's really good films, but with limited space. So we have to figure out which film we think would be the best fit for a festival. Michael, from your perspective and your rejections, what advice What advice can you give to other fellow filmmakers who might be experiencing the same thing?
I would say you should have a thick skin and get used to rejection. I think it's par for the course. Like, as you guys said, there's only, let's say you apply to 100 festivals. No matter how good your film is, well, almost no matter how good, I think that you're only going to get into a percentage because your film is only going to fit the branding and messaging of a certain percentage of these film festivals. I think for me, what was interesting was I had some early, really good success, and then it was like slump. And I started being like, oh man, I thought this thing was better, da, da, da. And then came another upswing. And so I did get into festivals like the Brooklyn Film Festival and the San Francisco Indie Doc Festival, which are, sort of higher ranked than some of the other ones I got rejected from. And for me, just having some success in each of these different areas or niches makes you know, okay, like the film is good and viable, and you just kind of have to keep pushing. But again, there's a cost for submitting to all these festivals as well. So as we discussed, having a strategy and thinking strategically in terms of what festivals you're going to apply to.
I just love where it's going because I'm going to pull from what you said, Michael, cost.
Yeah.
And Karen, you know for a fact that people think that in festivals, we are all rich. You allude to the fact that for screeners, for programmers, we don't really get paid. A lot of it is volunteered. So when people use their submission fees, how is that money sometimes or quite often being utilized from your experience, Karen, as a programmer in the festival? Or do you have any insights on that? And how do we determine the cost of submissions?
Well, we are mindful of the fact that we all know that filmmakers are not rolling in the dough either. So you try and price the submissions reasonably. You don't want them too cheap because you have to watch all these films, and if they're too cheap, people just send in any old stuff, and it's not fun to watch any old stuff. So it also make you think, do you want to, like Michael said, you can't apply to all of the film festivals out there. You got to think. So if you only have $500 earmarked for your submissions fees, you should research them. We use the money just to run the festival. If we have to fly a filmmaker in, we have to pay the theaters, we have to print programs. This year we're not printing programs, but we have to pay the companies that will upload our films for the virtual film festivals. You pay vendors for food. It's not free. You have to pay people. So it just goes into the pot of the income for the festival.
It is quite daunting. I did not realize how expensive it was and how easy it is for your submission marketing budget to be gobbled up. Is there some little tricks that people can utilize to help get submissions into a festival if they do not have any real funding? I know for us, we tend to sometimes be a little bit forgiving, but not quite often because you just can't. From your perspective, how do you guys handle all of the waivers requests or all of the we need some assistance requests? How do you guys handle that?
Well, we have a lot of sales. We have a student rate. We have we had a COVID rate. We have alumni get a discount. If you're on film festivals, Film Freeway, and you're a gold member, you get a reduced rate on your submissions. Sometimes people write me and give me a sob story, and I'll be like, okay, whatever. I'll give you a waiver of 50% off or something like that. And also early bird, it's usually cheapest if you have your film ready for the earlier submission rates are usually lower.
Yeah.
You can't give the whole farm away.
No,
So.
you honestly can't. And I'm really, really happy that we're having this conversation because very rare do the audiences and filmmakers get to see and understand the depth of what it really takes to put all these things together. And we're kind of disbunking, I guess, or debunking, or whatever that word we're supposed to be using. All of the myths out there, really and truly, that festivals is no longer relevant or we are utilizing the money just to put in our pockets and to get rich. But we are here to really serve a purpose, and that purpose is exactly for giving a platform for our community, especially now with everything that we are doing. I think, and then you can correct me, or any one of you can chime in if you think so, and we kind of alluded to it, as a platform that is showcasing and putting in the forefront our work, it is so relevant, especially now in this time, because quite often mainstream Hollywood and these people don't really take our work. I hear a lot of comments quite often that they're holding back their films for that Netflix deal, and which is great. But what kind of relationships, Karen, do you have with buyers? Or is your festival one of the festivals that have buyers and distributors attached to it that people can now have the potential of getting deals?
That is not my. I don't right now have relationships with buyers. I have more relationships with filmmakers than on the business end. Tied, the people who form the filmmaker support panels and networking panels with industry professionals. They do that, but I don't. I'm sorry, I can't say. I have a lot to do just picking the films, and I just kind of stay in that corner of the festival.
Okay. And what about Michael? You talked about preserving the relationship with the individuals that you are, the networking, the networking pool that you are garnering from the film festival, going to all these things. What are some of the key insights can you share in how that has really propelled your career? Because I know that in the back end you're doing a lot of amazing things, but let's talk about those, how important those preserving those relationships that you're formulating in the festivals are.
Good question. So, like I said, my distribution deal came through Studio Anansi, which is tied to the Third Horizon Film Festival, which is they do in Miami as well as a couple other places. And so I became close with that team through the festival, throughout distribution, and I think we will continue to be. Even right now, we're all writing some different screenplays, and it just so happens that there seems to be a lot of crossover in the ideas, which is great. Even for instance, I met 𝗏𝗍𝗄𝗏 in Trinidad. She has the short film 𝗠𝗶𝗏𝗏𝗀 and the feature, which should be dropping soon. And meeting, I don't know, for me it was really interesting meeting people like her. I would say very talented filmmakers in the Caribbean who, when I am then thinking of my next project, whatever iteration it's in, I now already have a pool of people that I can talk to either try and get on the project or who can point me in the right direction. Because from the very beginning when I started, it was like I had no idea really there was a Caribbean film scene. I had no idea who I would talk to about pretty much anything. I just kind of started going. And now at this point, pretty much anything that I wanted advice, or if I wanted to know about cinematographers in the Caribbean or editors, I now have people that I can easily just send a message and can point me in the right direction.
No, and that's key. I see Karen is shaking her head, and that's the premise of what we are doing. I had a question for you, Karen. Oh shit! This is being live, right? Oh my goodness! It's Sunday afternoon.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
About submitting, like I said before, we have thousands and thousands of submissions, and sometimes it's because you're not at the right festival, but sometimes it's because your film is not that strong, you know. And I always use the analogy of American Idol, you know, like, you know, the first couple episodes of American Idol, everybody in town wants to be Beyonce, but it's like, but you can't really sing. And so they get up there and they try, but they're not really. So I'm not saying this to be cruel, but like, really make sure, if you know that we have 2,000 submissions and 100 slots, don't be sloppy. If your film's not ready yet,
don't send it.
Funny. Yeah. Don't cut corners. I know it's hard to make a film. I know it's expensive, but better to put put a little more time and money into it and give the strongest film you can than cutting corners. The cutting corners shows, and with so much competition, you want to be strong. Like one of the things that really takes a lot of films out of competition, for me and for other programmers, is sound. You know, so if your sound is in and out, you can't hear, and you just put music on the whole thing to disguise bad sound, it's really difficult for audiences to hear it. So just make sure you're putting your best foot forward before you send your film in.
And that was kind of where my mind was before I had the brain freeze for 2 seconds. Is understanding that realm, because we do get a lot of films and it is difficult, and we do have requirements. And one of the things that I can really appreciate with your film, Michael, is the fact that you did take the time to make the sound as real as possible, because we are looking at it from different tools. It can be from a laptop, it can be from a phone. So we have to ensure that what we're hearing and what we're seeing is all synced together. It's just those small little details that Karen highlighted that makes a huge difference. And when we're looking at it in theater, the sound also have to feel balanced. So that makes it really, really, that sets you apart from the next person that did not take the time. I know for a fact, Karen, filmmakers contacting programmers. I think a lot of filmmakers don't hear from us, and they're like constantly emailing. What are just some of the housekeeping rules?
To me, it's like, if your film is good, I'll program it. You can't like badger me into putting your film in, and I have friends who are filmmakers who I love, and they will give me their film, and it's like, this film isn't right for this festival, or I'm not going to program it. Doesn't mean that, I don't like you, but it's not my film. It's not the Karen's Friends Film Festival, And you also, as a programmer, you're the advocate for the audience, so I could get more dinner party invitations if I invite all my friends, but people pay their money, to see films, and it's not cheap to go to a festival either. So you pay your money and you're watching some crappy film, you're like, and it's our reputation as a programmer. It's like, you picked that film. So yeah, if your film doesn't get picked, just don't badger the programmer. I haven't had that experience. I haven't had people who have, come at me and yelled at me for not putting their film in. I think filmmakers understand. I think, like Michael, they know that you're not going to get in. If you're an experienced filmmaker, like Michael said, just a percentage of the festivals you apply to, you're going to get in.
Do you get people asking for feedback as to why that film was not selected, or in that situation? And Michael, and I'm going to ask you the same question too, Michael, after Karen finished answering. Have you contacted any of the festival programmers to find out why your film, if ever, was not selected, for feedback, so you can improve yourself? So Karen, have you? do that?
Seldom. And when I first started screening, I'm still a screener for Sundance. And when I first started screening, I wanted to reach out to filmmakers and say, this is a really good film, except you need to cut 10 minutes out of it, or it's a really good film, but it's too much music. It's just too much music. But it's not my place to do that. If asked, I will tell you, but I just can't, you have too many films to watch to send feedback to everybody.
Michael, have you requested any feedback from any of the programmers that you were rejected from? Any film festival that you were rejected from?
I'm trying to think. I can't remember, to be honest. I think if I did it, it would have been maximum maybe like once or twice, to maybe one that I thought was a really good fit and then it didn't get chosen. And I think that's the only sort of circumstance I would have done it under, because otherwise you kind of already know there's a ton of people submitting films. There's only so much bandwidth to answer and watch and everything. And you just hope you get better luck at the next festival.
We have a question. The question was, any tips on how to get a film into a festival when the film isn't in English? Should it already be subtitled? Karen?
Well, there's a feature on Vimeo that will close caption a non-English film. But I mean, if it's going to get into an English-speaking film festival, yes, you have to subtitle it. People need to be able to understand the film.
Exactly. And I think that goes across the board. If you have an English titled film and you want to get it into a non-English festival, you also have to do your due diligence in making sure that everything is translated and also subtitled for that particular film. So, I mean, that particular festival. So it's an interchangeable action.
It's tedious, I'll say. I ended up translating and subtitling my film in French for a festival and for some other potential things on the line. But of course, I didn't have the money to necessarily pay someone to do all the subtitling, so I learned how to subtitle. It's meditative, I'll say that.
And how long is your film?
70 minutes.
And how long did it take you to do that?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Within 70 minutes.
Definitely.
I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best for that, because trust and believe me, my short documentary, they asked me to do the translation, and thank God I had it in a way that all of my narratives were already there, so it was easy for me to do so. Because it is a process. It is a process, transcribing and translating things. So I don't know. We have another question. It says, apart from visiting the film festival in person, how can you understand the brand of the festival and diverse a festival strategy?
We'll go on the website and see what previous winners were, see what they've shown before, and that should give you a good sense. You can read the missions. I mean, people will tell, all the film festivals have mission statements, and you can, figure out what they're about from that also.
Michael, how did you go about designing your festival strategy and your approach for festivals?
I think, so some of it was shooting in the dark in terms of not going on at first not doing enough research and getting certain rejections, and then realizing, okay, like each one, it is worthwhile to do exactly what Karen said and find out more about each one. And then, like I said, I think I broke it down into, the major, the mid-tier, the niche, and the Caribbean, and environmental, African diaspora, that sort of thing. And yeah, I don't know how much more I have to tell you about that. I think that's it.
Ashley, no, thank you for providing that information. Ashley said, how much is a film quality weigh in selection? My film was shot on an old DSLR. It is also a niche film. So I'm trying to figure out where I fit. Any advice for Ashley on this?
Well, you want to go ahead, Karen? Or?
Go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say I ended up shooting my documentary on a Canon 60D DSLR and a GoPro 5. And it's made it to around the Caribbean. It's made it to Brooklyn. It's made it to San Francisco. I do know, maybe Karen will be able to say more if, you know, some of the top tier festivals, if they have a cutoff. But I feel like especially if you're, did you say you're doing it, it's a niche film, okay. I was gonna say also, if you're doing it in a certain aesthetic, you can probably also get away with it. Like I have a friend who shot his whole thing. I think he originally shot it in 4K, but, or no, I can't remember, one or the other. It was like a video camera, old school video camera. And then he either had to upgrade it to 4K or it was 4K footage then played through a VCR. But it has a very old school sort of like VHS effect type thing. And so you could have done that pretty much with very non-modern cameras.
Karen, you were going to add?
Yeah, I think it's less the quality of the camera than, like Michael said, if it matches the themes of the film, or if it's just a good story. It doesn't have to be the glitziest 4K whatever the ever, you know. If it's an intimate, gritty film, and it's, you know, there are things that are shot on iPhones, honestly, and if it's done well, it's more the story than all the bells and whistles.
And
I agree.
Just to say something off of that, I mean, even when I started this project, I knew I was dealing with limited funds and that I'd have to work kind of within what I had. One book that was a great resource was Rebel Without a Crew, Robert Rodriguez. I know this is going to be mixed feelings on that, but still to be like, okay, there's elements of this that are doable. And then also there's a film I watched in school called AKA Don Bonus. And I think it's like Confessions of a Cambodian Refugee. And it's this guy just kind of like documenting his day-to-day life in high school out in California. And he's telling this very intimate story, but on pretty, I would say, quote unquote, low-grade equipment. But just like we said, the story is so strong and so intimate. And it feeds into it because you're like, this is just a high school kid filming his life with what he has.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Another, I just want to add in case we don't get to it, a big tip for filmmakers. It's really hard for programmers to program mid-length. So like a 40-minute film is really difficult to program because we program in blocks. You know,
Yes.
When you go to the movies, it's like an hour and a half, right? An hour, 20 minutes, hour and a half. So you want either one 90-minute film or maybe a little short of a feature film, and you can put a short in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if your film is 50 minutes, it's not long enough for people to buy one ticket for, and then you have to put another film with it, and the themes might not match. So think about that. And the same for shorts. This year we've gotten a lot of shorts that are like 25 minutes. And that's kind of long. So in a shorts block, you want like 6 or 7 films. So if your film is 25 minutes,
it's hard to program.
More space.
Yeah.
And I have seen very few films that are 25 minutes that couldn't have been 18 minutes. So if it's a short, try and keep it, 14, like 18 minutes longest, 12 to 18 minutes.
12 to 18 minutes. I agree. I totally agree. And those are just some of the little nicks that we on the back end tend to do with the dance. And that's what it's just a dance to make sure that everything flows nicely and it's not disjointed. And you're like, this doesn't match. I've been in a couple programs where I'm like, they were starving for films because it's clear that something went wrong with the program in here. Yeah, so you're absolutely right with that. Sorry about that, but great point, Karen, because I think a lot of people feel that they want to cheat. They don't have the money to complete a feature, but we would just do it as long as possible.
Yeah,
one of the advice that I give from the perspective of a filmmaker also is get eyeballs on your film before you actually submit it to different festivals. get as many eyeballs as possible that we trust. And if you have, reach out to people on LinkedIn, formulate relationships with them and say, hey, can you just do a screener with me to see how do you feel? And you really have to gauge and listen to some of the feedback that you're getting before you actually submit your films to festival. Anything that you would like to add on that?
Yeah, and not just like your mom. Who's
No. No.
Somebody is really going to tell you, and do it before you've spent all the money on whatever. Your friend, your roommate was a musician and you bought all this music from him, but now you don't like it or it's too much. You know, just do it while you can, before you commit to a big financial, you know, expenditure.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to kind of revisit what you were talking about before this when we talked about story is king. And I have to agree, it's not necessarily what the things are shot on, but there are certain elements in filmmaking that is crucial. Lighting is key because depending on your story to support the story that you're telling. Because if you are doing something that's intimate and everything is blown out, you're not really connecting with your audience there. It is completely contrary to what your story is trying to tell. We talked about the sound. Sound is crucial. That is another thing. Length. So these are just some of the tips that filmmakers have to be paying attention to, that programmers pay attention to. The overall arching essence, more so than the actual product that you're shooting it on. And I think a lot of us get so lost away with what people are selling us and saying that you cannot have a good film with something less expensive. I think if you're going for probably like a distributor or one of the top tiers, they have their own guidelines as far as what codecs they are accepting and everything like that. So you have to ensure that it can support it in that way. But for quite often, most festivals are taking MP4 or some kind of movie file that can be supported in that sense. So you can't go too crazy on the technical part of it, but ensure that your story and those basic elements in creating the film. And tell me if I'm wrong, Karen. Tell me if I'm wrong. Those are the elements that are most important.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And trust your story, trust your acting, and trust that you're conveying the emotion in the scene without throwing on tons of music. It's really, it's like a pet peeve of mine, but it's saying I don't think people get that this is supposed to be sad, so let me put on a whole bunch of sad music. And you know, you need some music, but like wall to wall music, like now you're supposed to be happy, here's happy music, now you're supposed to be sad, that doesn't work.
Yeah, music is supposed to add value, not take away, and not replace every single thing that is there in the film. I totally agree with you on that. And you also have to know the tones of the music, when if that really supports the film, that the story, I should say, sorry, that you're telling. Missy Christie from Grenada is saying, how do films or documentary become profitable?
I'll let Michael take that one.
So right now, I mean, it's different for every film. Like we said, some of the big ones will get to the big festivals and they'll get purchased by a big distributor. It could be HBO, Netflix, or someone of the sort. And you've got your money one time. For a film like mine, I managed to get a theater run in Dominica where we made some money off of that. Pretty much all the money I've made so far, I've reinvested back into the marketing and distribution stuff. So I should have some more money coming in now that it's online with Studio and Annecy. It's pay-per-view. So that's actually, I think, a great platform, and their setup and their deal is a good deal. What I have to do now, what's on me, is to get the word out and try and reach a critical mass where enough people are talking about it, and then it starts spreading organically. Because I do feel, at least with this film, it has, even superficially, that sort of like viral potential. Just to say, man survived a Category 5 hurricane in a palm leaf forest. You know, it's like, it's about so much more, but even just that, I think, is quite sellable. So I'm, like we said, podcasts, press releases, also even going to some of these festivals and trying to generate press around those festivals as well are going to be ways. But I would say, like, it is nonstop. So I'm doing all of that while also doing freelance work, and essentially that's my day job, and then my extra is doing all of the uncivilized marketing and social media and everything else.
Awesome. She has a follow-up question, and she wants to know, what platform do you use for pay-per-view? I guess she missed it. That's the Studio Nancy platform.
Yeah, I'm gonna type it in YouTube right now, but it's studioanancy.tv, and for me it's /uncivilized.
And then there are other platforms out there like Vimeo, who you can put a paid wall up on if you want to go more the independent route of controlling it. You have to do your due diligence.
And there's Amazon Prime, of course, as well. And then Netflix is usually more exclusive, whereas, you know, you could do Prime, Vimeo, Studio Nancy, for instance. So figuring out what mix works best for you.
But you also have to put a disclaimer out there. And I'm not speaking on that end, but we do have to put a disclaimer out there for pursuing some of the larger streaming sites like the Amazon Prime and like the Netflix. They tend to go through individual buyers, and they have their own relationships that people scout for films from platforms like ours, the film festivals. You also have distributors that you now strike up those relationships with, that negotiate the things under your end. So we just have to put that out there. So again, like the Thai Film Festival, that's a filmmakers film festival similar to that of 1261. But then you have those relationships that is formulated by coming through our festivals, and people are now doing their own behind the scenes negotiation with these distributors that get your stuff on platforms like those streaming sites.
There are also some small independent streaming sites. There's one called 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗃 TV,
Yes.
K-U-E-L-I TV, and she's like a black Netflix, and she buys independent film, and she puts them on her platform. There's another one called 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗃, K-U-M-B-A. I know the African Diaspora Film Festival is they buy content and run it out. So like Meschida keeps saying, you have to do your due diligence, but they're out there, and don't just feel like Amazon and Netflix and HBO are the only ones, the only game in town, because as you know, you've all been on Netflix for hours looking for something to watch.
Navigation is just wrong.
Yeah, and stuff
you can't find anything.
You can't find it. So these smaller platforms that have like dedicated people that just want Black content, Black independent content, if you go to them, you support Black business, you help Black distributors, and you get your film seen by people who are looking for your film.
Yeah, and very relatable. I recently got in contact with, there is a group that is doing something, Afroland TV also, that I am researching a little bit more thorough in trying to figure out what's best. Because you have to find that. You have to find the things, you have to find the niche, and you have to see where the eyeballs is going to be on your film. So those are just some of the things. I don't know of any other in the Caribbean. Do you know of any other distributors in the Caribbean, Michael, besides Studio and Nancy?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know if it's through Filmco or the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival, but I think they have a platform called Tego that is doing some stuff. And then there's some smaller ones that are popping up. There's one I recently was in contact with called Caribbean One TV. I think it's an interesting time right now. Like the whole media landscape has changed so much whereas before you had to rely on like traditional cable and everything else, and now there's all these things popping up that are a mix between sort of like cable and internet TV. So I think it's an exciting time for us, especially in the Caribbean.
We are working with a couple of the distributors in the Caribbean also. Thanks for reminding me on that. The Caribbean One TV, I totally forgot about that. That is messaging, human messaging, Lord have mercy, someone is messaging me. That is providing opportunities for independent filmmakers to now have their films being streamed on television. So you're writing for television within the region. So you're right, there's a lot of opportunities that is coming out from the Caribbean right now that filmmakers need to take advantage of. So that is something that is awesome. Someone wanted me to say, well, my sister actually wanted to say, don't forget to put in the little plug about support Chime In, because I never remember to say support Chime In. And she would kill me. So support Chime In, go on our YouTube channel through M Projects Creative and press subscribe and like, so we can have more of these engaging conversations. The time is flying up so quickly. I know we give some really awesome tips. Karen, if there is anything that you can tell an emerging filmmaker right now as a takeaway from everything that we talked about today, what is one key element or a couple key elements that they must adhere to from a programming standpoint when submitting to your film festival or any other film festival?
I'd say just really make sure you put your best foot forward. Really, make sure there's not typos in your graphics. Write a cover letter. You know, if you're for Film Freeway, you have to fill out a log line. A log line is just like a sentence about your film. A synopsis is about a paragraph about your film, 3 or 4 lines. Put those in there. It's like applying to a college or a job. You know, if you're sloppy and whatever. Oh, it's my Instagram is just MS.
It's MS. Okay, let me edit that. Go ahead.
And yeah, don't overdo the music. Make it a reasonable length. That's it.
Awesome. No, thank you for that, because I like that, because people really have to understand that flooding your film with just music is a huge turnoff. Yeah. It is an absolute turnoff. Michael, any advice? Go ahead.
One last thing, but also make your film. Just don't, you know, this is your expression. So there's a balance of trying to make it commercially viable, but tell the story that you want to tell. You know, you don't want to compromise making your story and then it doesn't get in and you're like, well, shoot, I should have just done what I want. Do the film that you love and you're satisfied with, and then send it out in the world, because then when the world loves it, then you'll know that you have something.
I totally agree with that, because I certainly makes my film the way I want to tell my story. Then it's unique to me. Michael, what are some of your parting words to any fellow filmmakers out there who wants to know how to navigate the film festival world and opportunities and challenges we may face?
I think one thing that comes to mind, even just as, you know, especially in the Caribbean, we're often working on a budget. I think 2 things that can help: if you don't have a camera that can shoot in RAW or in log, then if you shoot with sort of either CineStyle or you just sort of bring your contrast and saturation and everything else down, then you kind of have more information to work with in the image that can then be color graded and give it a slightly more professional look. And then also, if you are shooting with sound through your camera, which ideally you shouldn't be, but if you have to do that, there are also these sort of like XLR boxes. So you kind of attach that to your DSLR camera, and then this way you can actually get XLR sound running through this into the camera. It's all synced up, but it's going to be a lot cleaner than anything that you run through the camera, because the preamp in the camera makes it gives it a hissy quality. Mm-hmm. So I think just it's, you know, we have to try and figure out what can we do on a budget, but still the very best that we can possibly do it.
I totally agree. And thank you for that, because we know from what Karen says, sound is important. And you have some horrible sound. your film your film will be painful to get through, because we will get through it. But oh my God, it certainly will be something to disqualify your film from making the cut into the festival. So on so on that note, I would like to personally thank both of you guys for taking the time out this Sunday to just share some little tips about navigating the film festival submissions route. And you will be seeing Karen a little bit more. Both of you, you will be seeing more for the upcoming 1261 Film Festival in October. Karen, I am looking forward to hearing everything that you're dropping in a little bit more expansive way during the panel discussions then. Michael, I'm looking forward to sharing your film on the 1261 platform and having our audiences engage with you directly. Just wait for a few minutes. Let me just say my goodbyes to the audience and then I'll say goodbye. To everyone out there in the virtual world, thank you for chiming in today with us. I have to say, 1261 Film Festival, it is coming up in October. That's October 30th through November 3rd. We are doing a hybrid festival, meaning most of it is virtually based, but we are going to be doing some in-person experiences in Grenada. I know that the Tide Festival is coming up too, right? Karen, before I don't want to just overshadow that. The Tide Festival is coming up when? Is it November, right?
8th to the 11th. And it will be online. And the submissions we got 2 more weeks for submissions, and I can put a 50% code in on our chat.
Okay.
Filmmakers, if they want to submit.
Okay, so that is awesome news. Michael, Uncivilized is currently being streamed on Studio Anansi, and also you can go on his website and get it, and it will be featured. Do a special featuring at the 1261 Film Festival in October. So on this note, I would like to say thank everyone for supporting us, and all of the people who chimed in and had the wonderful questions. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you to our media partner, Ride Along, for streaming this with us. And until then, see you next week. Bye. Let me try to do my little outro. I'm always messing up, right? So this is the beautiful part now of me. This is my character coming out now. So let me try it again, right? I'm doing it again. So until next week. Bye.